So what next for Bryce Young? The former first overall pick out of Alabama, former Heisman winner. He's now been benched in his second season in the NFL after just a couple games. So this video, I'm going to go through what year one looked like for the former number one overall pick, what year two has looked like only through his first couple games. Of course, the infamous trade that we'll be looking at for a long time to come, I think. And then the outlook. What does it look like for Bryce Young? What needs to happen? Does he need to get traded? So year one, as we know, Bryce Young, he was the first overall pick. After that trade with the Bears, that gave them the selection. Obviously, there's a lot of talk now with CJ Stroud's rookie performance. He was picked number 2, but Bryce Young, in his first year, played the 16 games, and obviously they finished with the worst record in the league. 2 wins, 15 losses. And specifically for Bryce Young during the season, he completed just 59.8% of his throws, going for 2,877 yards. That was also along with 11 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. So the overall package, the stats, just the way he looked, just the eye test, it was not a good season for Bryce Young. And so of course we have to talk about the trade, what it entails, what picks, what players, because Bears have made certain picks now that have turned into genuine prospects, and we're going to be looking at this trade for a long time to come, because it could very well be the case that Bryce Young, by the start of next season, is not a Panther. So the big first piece that was an immediate hit for the Bears was DJ Moore. Coming over from the Panthers, one of the best offensive talents they've had in a long time, obviously including Christian McCaffrey, but DJ Moore slotted in perfectly in his first year. He was a number one receiver, and the Panthers losing him just highlighted more problems for their offense, because Bryce Young, particularly in his first year, basically had very little solid options on offense, whether it was receiver, running back, tight end. There was not much going for him. So in terms of the picks, with the 2023 draft, they selected Darnell Wright after moving down one spot, trading with the Eagles. So at the number 10 overall pick, the right tackle Darnell Wright, who's a nice piece. Obviously, their offensive line definitely needs some more work, but that's a whole different issue right now for Caleb Williams, who is the other big piece of this trade. Obviously, another first-round pick for the Bears, and after such a disastrous season during the 2023 season for the Panthers, finishing with the worst record, meaning that the Bears got the number 1 overall pick, selecting their new franchise quarterback, Caleb Williams. So as I mentioned, CJ Stroud is already, that whole 1-2 of their draft is going to be talked about for years. But now that the Bears have their franchise guy with Caleb Williams, if he is a bona fide success, it's obviously going to come back to this Panthers trade and then Bryce Young, and it's a whole ripple effect. The other pieces of the trade, Tyreek Stevenson from the 2023 draft, selected in the second round, a nice cornerback. He's been playing quite well across his early start to his career. And then also next year's draft, they still get a pick, another second rounder for the Bears. And if Carolina, who haven't looked good through the first couple games of this season, if they finish with the worst record again, that's potentially a 33rd overall pick, which is basically another first rounder. So now we get to year 2 of Bryce Young's career. What's happened in the lead up to this season and what's happened during this season? They signed Dave Canales, obviously offensive coordinator with the Bucs last season, and then before that worked with Geno Smith at the Seahawks. So 2 examples of quarterbacks that stifled, stagnated in their career recently, and through Dave Canales and obviously others, boosted their reputation massively. So personally, I thought this hire was perfect. Bryce Young coming off a very poor rookie season, number 1 overall pick. There's a guy there that can nurture him. But obviously that's all been thrown out the window, and we'll get to that. So as I mentioned before, Bryce Young's weapons in his first year did not help him a whole bunch. In his second year, Panthers added the likes of Deontay Johnson, a serviceable receiver. Added rookies as well, like Xavier Legette, Jatavion Sanders, Jonathan Brooks, obviously not ready to play just yet on the PUP list. While they're not massive names or maybe massive contributors straight away, it's definitely a step up from year 1. And so now we get to the season. What has transpired in the first 2 weeks? Week 1, against division rivals, the New Orleans Saints, who I've said before, I've thought they were going to be a bit of a basket case this year. That didn't happen. they blew them out 47-10 in week 1. So that's a game you really want to forget quickly. Moving on to week 2, Los Angeles Chargers, another team that I wasn't too high on going into this season, but they just went and beat them 26-3. So that's 13 points combined in 2 weeks. Not a great showing. And so in terms of Bryce Young during these games, it was 0 touchdowns and 3 interceptions. The offense just did not look good. It was not flowing at all, and that showed on the scoreboard. So even with the poor showing from the offense and Bryce Young, Dave Canales came out and said straight away, Bryce Young is still our guy. And only 24 hours to 48 hours later, they switched it up just like that. Andy Dalton named the starter in preparation for week 3. And so what we saw today, obviously the Panthers trounced the Raiders. Andy Dalton is the only quarterback this season to throw for over 300 yards and 3 touchdowns in a game. It says a lot. So the question looms large. Where do we go from here with Bryce Young? And in his infancy of his career, already being benched, former number 1 overall pick. And so this benching, there's a few different avenues, a few reasonings, like wrong or right, you can go with. But I think, honestly, it's probably the best decision for him personally, because his confidence looked already shot. And I think if you just kept throwing him out there week to week, throwing him to the Wolves, it almost would have ruined his entire career. And so I think there's no going back now with Bryce Young, to be honest. I think after 2 weeks, you don't bench your first overall pick if you plan to use him in the future. I think the Panthers are going to have to move off him. I think they're going to have to trade him. They're obviously going to be scrutinized heavily. Their owner is already scrutinized heavily. Known as one of the worst owners in the league, David Tepper. So this trade, the whole Bears trade, the fact that CJ Stroud is as successful as he is for the Texans, they're going to be copying it for years to come. And so ultimately, I don't know if Bryce Young has had a fair go at it. And we can't just write him off just yet, because we are seeing it literally this season. Quarterbacks, the best example is Sam Darnold. Through 3 weeks, he is one of, if not the best quarterback in the league right now. A former top pick. A top pick that failed at his first team and has been a backup for a couple of years, and now look at him, flourishing. So Bryce Young is a number 1 overall pick for a reason. He's a former Heisman winner. He showed out at Alabama, one of the best colleges about. And he showed that he can be a smart quarterback in a system. He's not the most physical guy going around. He's not your Anthony Richardson or your Josh Allen. But this kid, given the right opportunity, I think can flourish in the NFL still. And so that's why a trade, if not before the end of the deadline this season, if not then, it's got to be in the preparation for next season. Bryce Young needs to move on. He needs to find a new opportunity where he is loved, where he is appreciated, and where he can develop effectively. But let me know what you guys think of the situation in Carolina, of the Bryce Young saga, I guess, because obviously we've seen today the results that they garnered with Andy Dalton. I think it's over for Bryce Young in Carolina. But let me know what you guys think. If you did like this video, chuck us a like, subscribe, and I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.